Welcome back to our next session, the e-learning rudder. This is one of those titles where you read it and go, "Huh, this is going to be a little bit different." I'm quite interested and excited to see this one. So again, I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to get out of the way. Again, the stage is yours. Thank you so much for presenting with us today.
Thank you, Tom. And yeah, taking over. I was actually a little bit pressured when you've mentioned that, it's going to be a little bit different. But actually, it's nothing. Well, it's a bit different from the others because I wanted to keep this as conversational as possible. So I'd like to welcome any questions along the way as I present my slides with you guys. Because again, I intend for this session to be a little bit conversational. And actually, just to give you a little overview, the e-learning rudder 6 steps for a successful e-learning development is more of actually me compiling and making sure that there's a structure whenever we design and develop um, content. So that's pretty much it. And I wanted to kick this off with an intro, of course, and it's actually from one of my books, and I've mentioned it just like how a ship needs its rudder to steer its direction to its destination. Our e-learning development needs a guide too, of course. So, what I meant by this is that as I go through the the process of e-learning content design and development, I've noticed that there has been some sort of a combination of principles that we and methodologies that we keep on combining and of mixed up as well. The reason is that over time, IDs are now expected to do end to end from the traditional structure approach with a specialization. The IDs are now expected to do an end to end process. Therefore, from the start of the instructional design phase, they are also now expected to the entire e-learning development. And so along the way, of course, the principles and the methodologies has been kind of mixed up, and I think that's when I've decided to come up with 6 steps for a successful e-learning development. And just an overview, I've actually outlined the 6 steps, and it's actually not a rocket science. And for experienced instructional designers and developers, definitely this is not something new. So I've started with a step one: identify the learning objectives or learning outcomes. Learning. Step 4: develop the e-learning. Step 5: deploy the e-learning, and step 6: evaluate the e-learners. Definitely will be going deep dive onto off with the first step, which is identifying the learning objectives. So obviously, and I think this is the phase where I'd like to highlight and put emphasis on, because this is definitely the most crucial part of any design and development. Because if we miss this step, or if we jump straight away to the next phases or stages, we would tend to end up coming with not so good. I've mentioned that this is definitely the most crucial part of all the steps out there. So we definitely have to make sure that we establish a clear learning objectives. And so we have to gather all the relevant data. We have to leverage existing materials so that we could have a outline the scope of support. And when I say outline the scope of support, we tend to miss this step actually, because most probably we're gather all the relevant data and we've identified the learning outcomes. You wanted to jump right straight onto the designing of e-learning. Now, I start some sort of part of identifying the learning outcomes, but I in step for this because this is where we often miss it, and therefore we forget to really define who are the target audience, what is their level of expertise, the content, the topic that we are about to design or develop,
Hey, sorry,
right? So
we're
we
getting
don't want to miss that
we're getting your audio
because
cutting in and out quite a
depending
lot.
on the type of audience that we have, it's going to dictate the language that we're going to be using. It's going to dictate the scripts that we're going to be writing along the way. And so
Hello,
at this phase, we would also be able to output type. Now there are, yes, hello.
hello. Sorry, your audio's cutting in and out
Can
quite a
you hear
lot.
me?
So, yeah, we can hear you, but it's cutting in and out quite a lot. Like your slides are coming through. I'm just wondering, are you on a Wi-Fi or a cabled connection? And is there a way to get a slightly better connection? Because it feels like it's cutting in and out quite a lot.
Uh, I'm actually on a wide connection. So is it still cutting in and out?
It's super clear now, super clear right now, but it was cutting in and out a lot up until this moment, I think.
Ah, sorry about that. Do
No,
you want
no,
me to start over or
so let us know in the chat what
we're
would
good?
if there was an issue, where did it start, and do we need to recover, or are we more or less up to speed and we can carry on? Because I know there were people saying in the chat just now that there was a lot of audio issues.
Hmm.
There'll be a slight delay while we
Okay,
wait for the chat to let us know. One moment.
sure.
If you could start from number 2, perfect.
Okay, definitely.
Okay.
So yeah, starting over with step number 2, and I hope it's perfectly. I'm audible and it's not cutting in and out. So starting with step number 2, outline the scope of support. So in this phase, I know that it's it's technically part of the step number 1, identifying the learning objectives in most cases and in most design out of the first phase, which is analyzing the content and everything else that's needed, primarily because um, this is often missed, and even I myself, as I practice the instructional design profession, I often miss this because during the first phase, I've already gathered enough data, and I already know, like at the top of my mind, I already know what to design and what to develop. And I often miss this step because in this step, when we outline the scope of support, there's the phase where we are to define our audience. So when we say define your audience, of course, we have to make sure and check what type of audience are we going to be having for a basic user, or do they have an advanced knowledge of the topic that we're going to be creating? E-learning, it's going to dictate what the language that we're going to be using, as well as, of course, the scripts that we're going to be writing throughout the phases and the stages of our e-learning design and development. So at this point as well, we're going to be choosing the right output type. So of trying delivery that we can make could be an interactive e-learning, it could be a simulations, it could be a combination of both, and be creating. And at this phase as well, we have to make sure that we collaborate with our subject matter experts to ensure that we have accurate content. And I think what I wanted to highlight here as well is this early stage, we definitely don't have to recreate everything or start from scratch, because definitely as we collaborate, as we communicate with our subject matter experts or SMEs, there are a lot of available materials for them, policy document form or process documents or maybe an existing PowerPoint presentations before, and it's just a matter of us really converting it into an actual e-learning. So um, we don't want to miss this phase out, because we wanted to make sure that we outline everything early on, because the
Hi. I
next
think it's
phase is of step 3,
Hey, sorry, I
where
think
we're
it
actually going to
started.
be
Hello?
um, designing the e-learning. So at this stage, this phase, we will have to develop a sound learning strategy. So at this phase, we actually have to create a detailed design documents. Now, again, for experienced instructional designers and e-learning developers, this is not something new. But for those who are interested into moving into the instructional design profession and e-learning profession, definitely it's a must-have to really have or come up with a detailed design documents, because that's one way of us coordinating and communicating with our stakeholders and the subject matter experts. How are we going to be? How are we planning our e-learning to be designed? And this is also a critical part of how each of the knowledge checks are going to be placed into your e-learning content. So definitely we tell design documents primarily because as we go along our design phases, we often also partly because of the agile, where we often jump straight to the prototype and wait for the feedback, and we're just going to be jumping straight back to how we're going to be planning to design it.
Hey, Jogo.
And on top of the detailed design documents, it's important as well for us to have a storyboard. So there are actually two types of storyboard. It could be a written storyboard where it's going to be pure text, and there's also the storyboard has pictures, images on it, probably a sample slide or screen on how it's going to be look like, as or depending on your stakeholders or subject matter, you want to make sure that you know them well, and to explain clearly to them which type of storyboard would they prefer. Do they want to have like some sort of an actual visual screens or slides on the storyboard, or do they want do they want there what are the navigation guides, what are the triggers, what are the buttons that's going to be appearing on your e-learning screens. So just so they would be able to really understand before you jump straight to the actual development phase of the e-learning. Now for this one, I'm gonna pause a bit and find if you guys have any questions so far before we jump straight to steps 4 to 6.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. So we're still getting quite a lot of breaking up. I was trying to jump in a few times there. So I'm not sure if there's anything you can do to make it any clearer. 'Cause it's
Ah,
almost like there's a lot of kind of almost distortion on the line. Um,
ah,
so I'm not sure what it might be, or if you're near a mobile device or anything like that. Like I think it was a lot clearer than it was before, but I think there was still definitely some portions that were quite tricky. Um,
um, okay. I'm not sure if it has something to do whenever I'm presenting, but I'm thinking I'm just gonna stay in this the live streaming app just so I won't have my audio cut, and let's see.
this seems very clear right now.
Hmm.
I think if you're listening and you're in the chat, let us know if this is now clear, because this is very very clear to me at this point. Um, but yes, perfectly clear now. So whatever we're doing right now, that's working perfectly. Um,
Thank you.
there we are. So I think if we progress on from where we are, no questions in the chat at the moment. But if anyone's got any, please do throw them in, and then we can dive in with them.
Hmm. Cool. All right. So we're now actually on the step 4, which is developing the actual e-learning. So based on what we've gathered from the steps 1 to 3, it's now time for us to develop this. And again, as I wanted to put emphasis on what I wanted to highlight on this develop the e-learning phase is that we don't necessarily have to recreate, or because the common pitfalls that I've observed, especially on some instructional designers and e-learning developers, that they tend to, some of them tend to overanalyze and try to start something new from based on what they have gathered. But the truth is, somewhere along the way, as you speak to your subject matter experts as me or the other stakeholders, as you gather data, there is definitely something out there that's already existent. And therefore, you don't have to really start from scratch. And so you just have to develop it. Well, of course, not as how it looks like, but definitely you shouldn't be starting from scratch, because there's something there. Could be a process document, could be an old PowerPoint material, but definitely you shouldn't be starting from this from scratch. And as you develop it, one thing that I want to highlight as well at this stage is the brand consistency. So, as much as possible, I know that a lot of us want or tends to be extra creative, perhaps because we wanted to add a lot of glitz and make e-learning more entertaining and capture the attention of the audience. And I know how important that is, but I wanted to point out that a lot of times, if we add too much animation, too much graphics on a screen, it depresses the learning as well. So we have to put in mind that we're actually creating a learning material, and we're not creating an advertisement material. And so when I say we're creating a learning material, of course, capturing the attention of the learner is important. We have to make sure that we don't overdo it, otherwise it depresses the learning. So that's pretty much how we plan to, or we should be developing the e-learning material. So again, you don't have to start from scratch. There's something out there in the organization that you're working with that is existent. Second is make sure that we are familiar with the branding guidelines, so that we won't overstep. And again, I know it's important that we are creative as well, but we want to make sure that we are with the same branding guidelines of the organization we're working with, and also make sure that we don't add too much graphics or animation, because that again depresses the learning. Now, jumping on to step number 5, deploy the e-learning material. So actually, at this phase, as I've mentioned on the early stages, or on the first steps, I've mentioned that in the past we used to have assembly line where a group of instructional designers, graphic designers, developers, even um, voiceover narrators are in the same team. But of course, as the organization evolves, the workforce evolves, some, I'm not even going to say some, I think there's a lot more instructional designers or e-learning developers nowadays that are expected to perform everything end to end. So from instructional designing up until the actual developments. And so this phase actually just talks about how we're supposed to deploy to deploy the e-learning itself. So obviously we have to make sure that we are familiar with the learning management system that we're going to be loading our interactive e-learning into, and that way we're going to be able to smoothly enroll all the students, and we can assign all the learning modules effectively to them. And what I wanted to highlight on this phase or in this step is actually making sure that we communicate effectively through announcements, because at this phase, as we deploy the e-learning, this when we're going to be getting a lot of tickets from the learners saying that I can't complete all these e-learning that you've assigned to me. I'm having a little bit of problems here. But the funny thing is, when you look at the completion or the progress reports, at least more than 50% learners have already completed the courses, and then some of them would be raising a ticket to us saying that, hey, your e-learning is not working. So just ironic that, I'm thinking, and in most cases, based on the experience that I've encountered, it's going to be a user problem. Definitely they haven't um, really went through the actual e-learning a lot, or they're trying to crack the e-learning that we've created, perhaps trying to click on next just so they can finish the actual e-learning. But either way, we have to make sure that we deploy the e-learning smoothly, and ensure that there's propagating sets. If there's a certain time limit that they really have to spend on a screen, then definitely that should have been included when we have developed the e-learning content for them. So everything else, again, just make sure that you're familiar with the learning management system that you're working with, and we can deploy the e-learning smoothly. And last but not the least, of course, and this is the second most important thing. So, as I've mentioned earlier, the most crucial part of these steps of making sure that we design a successful e-learning is by identifying the learning objectives. And I'm going to say this is pretty much the second most important phase, which is the evaluation. So definitely we don't, or we want to make sure that we evaluate the e-learning that we have. So I know that in most organizations, there's other groups that do this, such as the learning and development team. But again, as we evolve, as our profession evolve as instructional designers, the expectations from us are also evolving, and we're expected to do end to end. So, of course, we are also capable of doing this, evaluating the e-learning. So we just have to leverage on the available data from us. So on the previous phase, the deploy the e-learning, I've mentioned that we have to be familiar with a learning management system that we have. So at this phase, we have to, make sure we can measure success through the robust reports that we get from the learning management system, and we just have to make sure that we analyze the data for continuous improvement, and guided by Kirkpatrick's uh, levels of evaluation. And then for some of you, I know you're also using the Phillips, which adds the fifth level, or how we're going to be measuring the ROI model. So just make sure that we're guided, of course, by those um, principles, just to see if our contents are, or if the e-learning that we have designed and developed are successful or not. And that's pretty much the end of the 6 steps for a successful learning. And I want to give the floor back to you guys. If you have any questions out of these 6 steps, please feel free to do so. And Tom?
Fantastic. Well, that was brilliant, and that last section I think was pretty clear throughout. So I think we nailed it in the end, which is great. Just while we're waiting for any questions in the chat, one thing I might ask, in terms of getting an organization to adopt something like this, right? Because the one thing I always come up against when I say, oh, we need structure, we need something robust around making sure what we're putting out is good. It's how much time is that going to take? How much is that effectively going to cost us? So what's been your approach to getting a business to buy into spending the time and resource to have something robust like this?
To be quite honest with you, I don't necessarily have a specific time frame in mind, because getting the buy-ins usually happens at the first 2 steps, actually. So as you can remember on the step 2, or outline the scope of support, that's when we introduce the detailed design documents. And in that document, they're going to be seeing the process approvals. How many times are they going to, or how many times are they supposed to review the design itself? How many times are we supposed to do the revisions for the actual e-learning? So as early as that point, they would already see what is expected along the way. And I think that's where we would be getting their buy-ins.
Love it. I think you're exactly right. That kind of, if people know what they're getting into, they're a lot more likely to be okay with it further down the line, right? I think that makes a lot of sense. Brilliant. Well, we've not had anything come in the chat, but if there are any questions, please do continue to send them in, to put them in the comments, engage in the WhatsApp, and extend the conversation to there. But thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and share this with us. I think it's really interesting. These are the processes we don't spend much time talking about, right? We all want to talk about the exciting kind of incredible design journeys we go on, but this underpinning, I think, allows us to just be better at delivering what businesses really want from us. So fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tom.
And thank you, everyone in the audience, for turning up, being involved in the chat. And we've got our next session starting at 3:15 GMT from Neurodivergent for Neurodivergent with Christina Rogers. So come and join us for that. But we shall see you later. iSpring is an e-learning software provider dedicated to streamlining e-learning worldwide. With a team of top industry specialists, they create tools that make e-learning both efficient and enjoyable. Their AI-powered course creation tool, iSpring Suite, and the iSpring Learn LMS are the top choices for thousands of instructional designers, L&D pros, and content developers. Crafted with the user workflow in mind, iSpring ensures a seamless experience for the creation of impactful learning content. Their website, iSpringSolutions.com, offers a treasure trove of e-learning resources perfect for those seeking to boost their L&D career or elevate their organization's e-learning practices. You can check out the iSpring Solutions website using the link in the description below.